History says that whoever wins the first fight has a 2-to-1 chance of winning in the second fight. So Conor McGregor taking on Dustin Poirier, will it follow suit? Will it continue that path? Will Conor come out victorious? There is no true way to know. I have a coach who often tells me these fights can't be talked about. These fights have to be fought. And I tend to agree with him. These fights have to be fought. If we look at the stats, the tail of the tape, 26-6, taking on 22-4. That is not too much of a difference. The height, the same. Average fight time within reason, 2 minutes of one another. Weight, of course, is the weight class. 2-inch reach advantage for Conor. But I think Dustin is going to negate that, and both are southpaws. Even when we get into the strikes, the accuracy, who lands what, who throws what, the numbers are just too close. And there's a tendency for Dustin to do a little bit more grappling, to go for takedowns. But as far as how good he is at it is what makes the difference, because Conor tends to have a little bit of better defense when it comes to that. Common opponents is what's most important from my estimation. And I would have gone with the amount of time off, but the time between fights is reasonable. Conor's been off about a year, and Dustin's been off about 7 months from his last fight, so I don't see any guy being that much sharper than the other. I see them being very sharp, but just not in the same way. They both lost to Nurmagomedov. They both beat Eddie Alvarez, and I think they both beaten Max Holloway. So the difference in the Holloway fight is that I think Dustin fought a better version of a Holloway, just short notice. So what is going to make the real difference? I think the real difference is energy. What do you mean, coach? If you look at Conor McGregor's pay-per-views, he makes stars. Conor McGregor changes the game. When fighters have fought on a Conor McGregor pay-per-view as the co-main or the undercard, people tend to get their own pay-per-views. They tend to rise up in level. And one thing you also notice about his pay-per-views is that anywhere between 6 and as many as 10 people on the main card usually are people who have held gold in other organizations at a high level, or they have fought for UFC gold, or they've won UFC gold in some capacity. We have tournament winners, we have interim champions, former champions, men's champions, women's champions. That's what Conor McGregor's undercard looks like. Yeah, it may not look like that tonight because of COVID, but you still have at least 5 people on that main card who've held titles or have won some type of UFC gold or fought for it. Usually the winner, especially the winner of the co-main, goes on to headline their own pay-per-view when fighting under Conor McGregor's. It's just something about being in a room like that. Conor raises levels, and I think that Conor feeds off of that, because I think that he realizes I'm just the best of these champions, but it still inspires him, especially when there's so many on the same card, so many in the same area, whether they be in the same dressing room. I don't think we're putting a lot of fighters during COVID in the same dressing room, but I do believe that you still draw from that energy, that connectedness, just knowing that they're in the room. I think there is something, when you listen to Conor, and he talks about legacy, and he talks about doing this for others, and he talks about being able to challenge himself. He talks about being disappointed that he didn't have a lengthy fight with Cerrone. He talks about that he didn't see a lot of fighters out there in the landscape that were right there for him, and now he's excited to look at this card, and he goes, hey, there's 3 or 4 people now that I can fight. Charles Oliveira is standing in the wings. Nurmagomedov may come back. He's excited again, and I think Conor is a fighter that draws off of energy, whereas Dustin is a guy who's talking about responsibility and being an example. I think there's just two different aspects, and both aspects are very positive, but the one that really sinks into the fight for me is the way Conor is engaging the fight. Again, if you look at the stats, there's not that much of a difference. And if you look at history says go with the guy who won the first fight. But I'm looking at the energy, and I think Conor is the guy who's saying, you know what, this is about the fight itself. It's not about anything else. It's about the fight. I want to explore new movements, and I think that's important to talk about, because whereas a lot of young fighters, when they go into a fight for the first time, the difference in energy there is they want to be somebody. They want to go out and do something flashy to try to get everybody excited about them for the long term, to get their name out there. Whereas Conor is going to go out and do the basics, but he's going to do them in a spectacular fashion. And we don't need any precedents, because we just saw it, this most recent UFC with Max Holloway, where you just throw and throw and throw, and you land and you land and you land, and you reset and you attack. You just take the basics and perform them at a high level. If you really want to be known, no one's saying you have to throw a spinning kick like Barboza. What everybody wants to see is, can you continue to stay in the fight? Can you stay engaged? Can you fight as if you're trying to win the fight? Take your opponent out, whether it goes the distance or not. They want to see you put out that energy, and that's what Conor McGregor is so great about doing. Win, lose, or draw, he puts out the energy, and he makes it exciting, and he makes himself must-see TV. He's a guy you want to come back and view. He's a guy you want to come back and have entertain you. He's a guy that makes you want to become like him to some degree. And it's not just the flash, it's not the clothing, it's not the whiskey, it's that energy, it's that attitude. And some people don't like it. Some people say he's arrogant. Some people say, man, that guy gets on my nerves, he makes me sick to my stomach. It's because they don't know how to raise their personal level. They don't know how to challenge themselves. They don't want to be involved in that type of mentality, because they don't know how to drive their own energy in that direction to develop that mentality. So they just leave it as hate. Now, I don't have to be the biggest Conor McGregor fan to appreciate what he's doing, but I like the energy, and I can tell in which fights where it's kind of phony and he's not really driven by this energy, and it's just everything to hype up the pay-per-view. And the two fights, unfortunately, that he lost are the ones where I felt the energy was false, and that was when he fought Floyd Mayweather and Nurmagomedov. I think in the Floyd Mayweather fight, he was trying to attract a different audience, the boxing audience, and get them involved. And with the Nurmagomedov fight, I thought he was trying to make Nurmagomedov a bigger star by being the heel in the fight, if we'll use wrestling terminology, pro wrestling terminology. I thought he had to make himself the heel to make Nurmagomedov bigger. And look at it. It worked. Again, if you fight in a Conor McGregor fight, you become bigger. If you fight on a Conor McGregor card, you become bigger. I can't remember the card, but there was a card where it was Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Yoel Romero, Raquel Pennington, and I can't figure out I think it was Tyron Woodley. They all won their fight on that card, and right after that, you would notice that they all got pay-per-view points. And I think Holly Holm fought on the Conor McGregor on a different card. She fought on that same card that night with Jędrzejczyk and all them, but she lost, and still her pay-per-view numbers went up. You understand what I'm saying? She got more headlines, and everybody on that card got more headlines. Jędrzejczyk was the only one who kind of didn't get her own pay-per-views, but she still headlined a lot of fight nights and a lot of co-mains, and that's because you got a women's champion up against men's champions. So I think if she didn't face that, she might have had more pay-per-views. But if you just look at Conor McGregor pay-per-views where he is the headline in any capacity, everybody on that card benefits. And I am so excited about that, because my girl Amanda Ribas is on the main card tonight, and she gets a win. I think she is going to be a headliner. I don't think a lot of people know about her. I am super excited about her. I think that Chandler wins this fight for some reason. I know how tough Hooker is. I just think that Chandler wins the fight. It's just something about it, just a feel. Watching him in interviews, he's taking it too casually. There's this tendency to look at guys when they come from Bellator not being on the same level as the guys in the UFC. I think that's a mistake. That's basically my preview of how this card goes tonight. I am Coach Sess, and you've had words with the Mad Coach.